Now that you're putting them together, I'm like piecing them in my brain like it's the end of The Usual Suspects. And I'm like, oh,
My
it's right
God.
there.
Hello, and welcome back to Rewatching Home Movies, a weekly watch-along podcast where three friends break down the 1999 animated series, Home Movies. My name is Tim, and I'm obsessed with home movies.
My name's Adele, and I'm a home movies newbie.
And my name's Marcin, and I've never seen home movies.
Home Movies Season 2, Episode 12, titled Pizza Club. Original air date March 23rd, 2002 on Adult Swim. Written by Brendan Small and Bill Broaddus and cast. Directed by Lauren Bouchard and produced by Melissa Barden-Galsky. Synopsis for this episode: Paula expresses interest in appearing in Brendan's movies, while Coach feels that Andrew is a threat. Meanwhile, Cynthia pops back into Brendan's life.
Yeah, she does.
I feel like Brendan pops back into Cynthia's life.
Yep.
Yes, he do. But before we get this episode started, why don't we sneak into the little cozy creative corner, shall we? The creative corner, of course, is where we highlight something we are creating, consuming, producing, whatever in the creative realm. Bob? Creative corner, doodly-doo. So, creative corner, who would like to go first? Okay, me. I'll do it. My creative corner this week is a series that Adele and I finished in like 2 sittings that just came out, and it was the 2nd season of the show Squid Game.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Ah.
Shows like this that carry like a huge kind of cultural relevance. For me, it's like once that content drops, it's like a race to be like, okay, am I going to be able to get through this show or am I going to get spoiled?
Yeah.
Because there are, maybe it's just me because my algo is a little jacked, but dude, every other post on Facebook for me is a fucking Squid Game and probably spoiler, but something about Squid Game.
I miraculously avoided spoilers for Squid Game, which I pat myself on the back for.
I did too. I think we got through it fast enough that I was able to avoid spoilers. But yeah, we just got through it. It was 7 episodes.
Yeah.
And afterwards we talked, and I did feel that I think I enjoyed this one more than I did the first season.
Oh, yeah. I liked both a lot.
Yeah.
But I feel like the 2nd season was there was a lot more psychological horror in it for
Yeah,
me.
a lot more suspense and
Yes.
psychological thriller, yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things I did bring up, the show takes place in Korea, and, you know, if somehow you've missed Squid Game, it's essentially like a group full of people, most of which down on their luck, in debt, a lot of them due to a medical debt, who are put in this position who continuously vote against their own interests. And I was just like, man, as Americans, I wish this was a little more relatable.
Yeah. The thing that got me about watching Squid Game is because now, of course, Netflix has fucking ads while you're watching it. And one of the ads was, I thought the show was continuing it because it was just, they just showed an ad that looked like it was for Squid Games. But oh no, it was an ad for Domino's because the dude was about to get shot. And he's like, ever need an emergency pizza? Just use the Domino's app to get that speedy delivery at the time that you need it. And it's like, how dystopian of a world where like you're so fucking tone deaf, that ad.
Literally, they are playing the red light, green light game.
Yeah.
The first game that's played in both of the seasons of Squid Game.
Mm-hmm.
The literal game where people realize what kind of game they are now in. Because it always starts with people being like, oh, this is just a silly... And then someone gets shot, and then they're like, wait a minute. Let's incorporate a Domino's pizza ad into this. I've seen a Doritos ad that was a cross with Squid Game. There are Squid Game skins in the new Call of Duty game. There's a Squid Game app that you can now get for your phone. There are YouTube influencers who now have shows that are similar to Squid Game, but obviously people aren't dying, but it's people who are fighting and fucking each other over for money.
Yeah, I think there unfortunately just so many people just miss the fucking plot, especially the ones who are making all the money, apparently. They're like, oh, they won't understand. They'll think this Domino's ad is just cheeky and fun. Meanwhile, we're sitting there fucking horrified that this even exists, literally seconds after watching the show.
Yeah.
It's
wild.
I was trying not to get spoiled. I knew you wouldn't spoil it for me, but I haven't seen the second season. I've only ever seen the first one. And I didn't jump into the media scream when it was jumping on and everyone was watching Squid Game. I actually went to a mutual friend of ours' house, and they were watching the finale of Squid Game. And,
oh, shit.
But they were watching the subs, so I just sat next to the TV and just looked away, and I had no idea what was going on, so I didn't get spoiled. But after that, I did go home, and I did start watching Squid Game, and it's very good. It's a very good tale of, I say a dystopia, but reality for a lot of people, and it's one of those shows that I have this love-hate relationship with it, because I didn't want to watch it because I was just like, oh, it's another gore fest. It's just like Saw. It's just like this. But it's very relevant, and when I watched it, I really did love it. But the hate comes from people who really don't get the message and think, oh, this isn't real. This isn't what reality is. But reality, this is what everyone does on a daily just to get by, just to get money. It is just die or kill other people to keep going, and I hate it, and I hate when shows like this come out and then people watch it and don't want to do anything about it, and they just get the satisfaction from it and keep on moving as if this isn't, a big old warning sign.
Yeah, for real.
And like you mentioned before, somebody watching it with the subtitles on, honestly, that's how you have to watch it. I would not recommend the dubbed version. The acting is weirdly bad.
Well, the voice acting. I know my brother watched the dubbed version, and when it comes to serious stuff like this, it makes it goofy, and I can't do it. It's gotta be I'm not against dubbed. The dubbed definitely has a time and a place,
sure.
But for Squid Games, the subtitles and it captures what they're trying to say more than trying to be set in English.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it forces us to set our phones down, actually pay attention to the entire episode.
Yeah.
There's no distractions because you're literally going to miss everything. You don't know what they're saying. So, yeah, the subtitled version is definitely the way to go.
When I first watched the first season, I did start with the dub, and I had to, because I just can't stand looking at the bottom of the screen the whole time, and that's usually where my eyes go when I'm watching subs. But for Squid Game, I had to switch over to subs because the dub was horrendously bad.
It takes you out of it.
Yeah.
It kind of does.
It didn't do it justice whatsoever.
And for season 2, no spoilers, but there's a character who will just randomly, one or two words a sentence, say an English word.
Mm-hmm.
And just the way that it's you have to hear it how it's intended.
Right.
So, highly recommended. Apparently, season 3 is coming out later this year. So we have that to look forward to, and that is my creative corner.
Doodly-doo.
Doodly-doo. Adele, did you want to go next, or you want me to go next?
I can go next.
Okay.
Mine's just kind of short and sweet. I listen to mine's music again, as it usually is. There's this artist called Youngblood, and he is from Doncaster, and he takes a lot of his inspiration from pop punk music from the early 2000s.
Was he by chance dancing at his funeral?
That's one of his songs. Yeah, it's a really good song.
I like that song.
Dancing at My Funeral. I have an album of his on vinyl, and last year in 2024, he put on an event in England called Bloodfest, and it was in some random farmer's field, and like people came from all over the UK to go to this like music festival that he put on, and it was just very wholesome, and the whole show was based on like coming together and becoming a support system, because his whole thing is like, it's okay to be weird, it's okay to be depressed, it's okay to hate yourself, it's okay to love yourself, it's okay to love everybody else. And it was a very like, it's like a punk love fest, honestly. And then like, if you have, I know they did like a tiny documentary on it on YouTube, I believe. If you have time to watch it, it's a really good one. But it just shows like his love for his fans and how he genuinely just wants to like bring people together. I know he got a tattoo and invited like 30 of his fans to just hang out and watch him get a tattoo. And, yeah, he's good people.
Yeah.
So
well, music aside, it sounds like he's a pretty just genuine dude.
Yeah.
Like just a genuinely chill, cool dude.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the TikTok you sent me of the crowd when he was showing one of the videos to his crowd and saying like how much he appreciates his fans?
Oh yeah, I think I did send you a Youngblood video a while back. Yeah, he's very for like men in skirts. He wears a skirt on stage a lot. He's an all around pretty good dude. Plus he's got a kickin' accent, which scratches my brain. And that's mine.
Yeah, I definitely think, especially in today's climate, finding musical artists that are actually like positive and wholesome and care about their fans and stuff like there's not as many.
Yeah,
there's not as many as we had hoped. So it's nice to have those artists like that you can not only appreciate their art, but then be like, and they're just like a genuinely good person.
Right.
Yeah, that's really hard to come by nowadays when every single YouTuber or streamer or person that we grew up loving just somehow has a shady past or is just trying to scam us with crypto or a Lunchable or, you know, it's whatever they want to get whatever money they can from us, and I get so fucking sick of it. It's why every time I'm on TikTok, if the TikTok even says shop on it, I just scroll. I don't want anyone to sell me anything.
Yeah, I feel that. Any kind of ad. I haven't even been on TikTok that much since the holidays because I'm just fucking over it. It makes me feel kind of gross every time I go on.
I am so happy I did that data strike because it really
same.
It got me disconnected from having to be on these apps constantly, and it was very refreshing.
And then going back to them after the holidays, I was like, this feels dirty. This feels wrong.
It really did. I think about like all of the strikes or the sit-ins that people used to do, like the bus strikes and like how it used to last 384 days. And I'm like, oh, this next data strike's that's where I'm pointing to. That's where I'm trying to get to. Just stay off forever.
Throw our phones out.
I'm literally thinking about getting a flip phone and just an MP3 player.
I was going to say, let's all go back to flip phones.
Honestly,
all go back to flip phones.
If we could all, as a friend group, decide to just get flip phones and that's our only way of communication, that's all I need. The reason why I haven't thrown my phone out is because I need it to like contact people that I love.
Yeah.
But if we could just all be like, hey, let's all get flip phones and just text each other, I'd be like, yeah, let's do that.
Oh, dude, Adele, where would you put me on your speed dial?
Oh, let's say you'll be number 8. How about that?
Okay. Okay.
That's a good number. I like the number 8.
It is a good number. I
just be knowing that my family's probably not on my speed dial. So
yeah,
the fact that speed dial has been made on at all.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I just miss speed dial. I miss the whole MySpace. You're in my top 8 friends or whatever it was.
Dude, that shit used to cause fights, man.
It did. It was fucking.
Notice I'm not on your top 8 anymore.
Oh my god, I used to have Mitchell Musso in my top 8. It was totally a fake fan account, but I was like, I got Mitchell Musso in my top 8.
Yeah, bring it back, baby.
Yeah, for real.
For my creative corner, I was going back. I made a list of things I wanted to get to today. Not today, but like creative corners. I got a lot of them, and I go back and forth all the time on it. But one of the things I've been consuming a lot recently is, we talked about it on the show before. I really love Yu-Gi-Oh! And I love card games in general, and it sucks because there's not a lot of people I can play with. There's not a lot of people I can just really enjoy or talk to about Yu-Gi-Oh! Because whenever you bring it up, people are like, oh yeah, the anime, or, you know, old school anime, you know, Yu-Gi-Oh! And now I have been to locals and I have seen what modern Yu-Gi-Oh! Is like, and it's not great. It's just,
oh no.
it's fun if you can get the right mood in there, but it's an itch that I want to get scratched, but it's so rare to get scratched because there's not a lot of people I know who play Yu-Gi-Oh! And most of my friends love Magic, and I don't know, man, I'm not a huge fan of Magic. I'll play, 100% I'll play, but I am not spending $5,000 on a deck just so I can try to play. But the Yu-Gi tubers that I have been enjoying a lot, YouTubers that play Yu-Gi-Oh! And talk a lot about card games in general, Team APS on YouTube. They have this podcast called The Pot of Greed, which is POD of Greed, but it's also a Yu-Gi-Oh card, The Pot of Greed. And I've been enjoying it. Team APS, they have a couple of co-hosts on there, and they have really nuanced discussions about not just Yu-Gi-Oh, but all card games and video games in general. They have, honestly, it's a weekly segment at this point when they talk about the Pokemon theft that happens, because Pokemon cards are constantly being stolen, and schemes are happening to just break into card shops and steal Pokemon cards because they're so fucking expensive now and so rare.
We were just at Walmart getting we needed these storage bins. And remember, we went to grab some storage bins off the top shelf, and on the bottom shelf, someone had taken, it looked like a big red box of Pokemon stuff, but there was like a Charizard figure in there. But I know there's like a bunch of boosters. Dude, somebody ripped that shit completely open, took all the boosters out of there, and then just left the box and the figure.
Yep. I am not surprised. It just came out that, I don't want to say who, but like a Japanese mafia has been using Pokemon cards to launder money for a long time. And honestly, you just look up Pokemon theft and you'll be scrolling for days about how many times people have tried stealing Pokemon cards because of how expensive they are and how much of a scheme they are to get money just like real quick, because people love Pokemon. People love playing it. And unfortunately with card games, the better the card is to make your deck, actually playable, the more expensive it is. And it sucks. It's part of the reason I don't really, play as much. But I love listening to Team APS on their Pot of Greed, because they just talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! News, Magic the Gathering news, Pokemon news, video games in general. But I love their nuance. I love Paul and Alec because they have a lot of nuanced discussions about a lot of things. One of the things I was going to try and implement into this was an anti-creative corner, where I talk about the dangers, or I talk about bots in the news with AI, how AI does this, or if they've done this. But Paul and Alec on Team APS, they talk about very important, nuanced conversations about the gaming industry, and they're just very funny and very direct, and I really like listening to the content, and them talking about Yu-Gi-Oh! Or playing Yu-Gi-Oh! In general is always really fun for me.
Nice. And that was called Pod of Greed?
Yes, POD of Greed.
That's a funny name.
Nice. Whenever I hear of Pot of Greed, I think of Drew Afawalu got a comment saying that she looks like the Pot of Greed, and even she was like, yeah, you got me.
Yeah. I saw that. That was very funny.
Yeah.
Good creative corner. Well, are we ready to jump into this episode, kids?
Yes, sir.
Let's go.
I was in the other room for the beginning of it a little bit while you guys were watching it, and Adele was laughing a lot.
Nuh-uh.
I heard it. I heard it.
I was definitely making some noises during this episode.
Yeah, good and bad.
Yeah.
I think if you're one of those people who don't like the secondhand cringe, there were a couple of parts of this episode that are like, ooh.
Yeah. Anytime Cynthia was mentioned or on screen, Marcin was like, ah!
Because Brendan was... we'll get into it.
Well, let's get into it, shall we? This episode, like so many others in season 2, opens inside of a movie. We have Melissa playing the character of Little Malulu. We hear Brendan off camera asking if she had fun today. She says it was great. And then we get a shot of Brendan and Jason's character both holding balloons and wearing the classic striped convict outfits. Brendan's character tells her that he's glad that she had fun and that she makes him so proud. Malulu comments, "Oh shucks, you two are the nicest escaped convicts I ever did meet." Brendan and Jason hold hands, and that's when we see that they are handcuffed together. So they ask Malulu if she knows why they're spending the day with her today, And she replies, because? And that's when Brendan and Jason's character explain to her that they are both her father. We have the little, music sting, like, diddle-diddle-ding. And it shows her face, and then she's like, oh, are you also my mother? And it has the sting again, and they're like, oh, no, little Malulu, no. But we did know her. That's when they go on to explain that they fell in love with her on the same night, in the same room, in the same bed, at the same time.
These children talking about having a threesome?
Yeah.
Kind of seems like
I love that Brennan was like, there's no medical way to prove which one of us is the father.
Right.
That was literally his next line. Yeah, like, so as you see, no medical way. But they both love her so much. So Jason goes on to explain that the next thing they know, they were thrown in jail for a crime they may or may not have done.
Did they ever say what the crime was?
I don't think so.
I
wrote down may or may not.
Yeah, I like that. They're like, we haven't quite decided if we did these crimes or not. But they broke out because they heard she was alive. And it's at that point that Paula busts into the scene to tell Brendan he has a phone call. Brendan asks if the call could wait, and she explains that it's from thine father, sir. So Brendan excuses himself to take the phone call, and that's when Jason tells Melissa kind of low-key, like, weird family.
That's what I always assumed my friends would say when they'd leave my family's house.
Weird family.
Yeah. My friends usually just said, I'm so sorry. And then it moved on.
That's funny. So now we cut immediately to Brendan on the phone. And yep, he's talking to Andrew. So he gets on the phone and he's like, hey, we're in the middle of him. He may quit. Pretty much explain to Andrew when he gets on the phone, like, hey, I am in the middle of something. Like, what's up? So Andrew, like, totally not understanding the assignment. He's like, oh, what's the movie about? And that's when Brendan explains it's like My Two Dads meets The Fugitive kind of deal. And Andrew even admits, hey, I don't think anybody's done anything like that before. And then he goes on to ask, like, who's in it? And he's like, well, you got myself, you got Melissa, you got Jason. And then Andrew kind of like playing along is like, you got Jason? Wow. And Brendan tells him, yeah, I got him in a multi-picture contract.
Marston's like, that's with me and Nate.
Is it the same 34,000 films that you've got him on?
It sure feels that way to Nate.
And they even both, like, I think Brendan's like, yeah, he probably should have had a lawyer take a look at that. And Andrew was like, yeah, I agree. The conversation kind of fizzles out, and Brendan like, so what's up? And that's when Andrew is like, oh, just calling to confirm our Pizza Club meeting for tomorrow. Brendan checks his calendar, and literally the only day that is circled is the Pizza Club meeting day. He's got it down for 3 o'clock, and Andrew asks if he wants to push it up an hour to 2 o'clock, and Brendan says it shouldn't be a problem, but he'll just have to move some stuff around. I don't know if you saw his calendar had like some weird Dracula kind of monster thing on it. But yeah, Pizza Club was the only thing that was highlighted.
What? I'm looking back at the Dracula thing.
Yeah, it's like a Dracula monster kind of hybrid deal.
Yeah, there it is.
Brendan heads back into the studio, and that's when he sees Paula seems to be filming something with Jason and Melissa.
It looks like she was trying to reenact one of her romance novels.
Oh, yeah. Jason's wearing a Robin Hood hat. Melissa's got the little kind of pointed pink princess hat. Brendan is like, what's going on? And Paula immediately is like, nothing. Hides the script behind the back, and we even see the script for a second. It's a movie called Robin Good.
But Robin Hood was good.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's a little redundant.
But, like, good to who?
Ah.
Right. I think you're right. I think this might be like a romance novel thing. Because the way, like, Jason had Melissa almost in like a dip.
Yeah.
Like,
they did not look like they were enjoying the scene together. They both, I'm looking at this still right now. They're both like staring dead-eyed.
Yeah. Well, the script even has Paula Small credited as the writer. Brendan, very confused, asks again, what's going on? And again, Paula is like, nothing. And then she kind of pops in and is like, real quick to Jason and Melissa, that's a wrap. Jason immediately drops Melissa and then puts his hands on his head. I don't know if you saw that little nervous Jason pose. And Melissa's kind of even looking up at him like, really, dude? Like, Because, yeah, he just straight up drops her.
I didn't notice that. I don't know what I get like blind to Jason when he puts his hand on his head. I'm like, oh, I just noticed that.
You don't see him. That's the whole point of it is he goes incognito mode. Stealth mode. It's camo. It's Jason camouflage. Brendan tries to get everyone back on track and says they need to get this scene in the can and tells everyone places, and then he kind of asks, like, where's Dwayne? That's when we cut to a quick scene where Dwayne seems to be packing up his stuff. Brendan is confused and asking Dwayne what's happening, and Dwayne explains that he has to split. Brendan is very much like, no, the actors need to hear the music in order to react, and it's very crucial. And Dwayne explains his band is in the battle of the bands, and they have to rehearse. Brendan, like, lowers his voice a little bit, and he's like, I don't want the others to hear this, but I'm afraid you might be spreading yourself a little thin creatively. Dwayne, like, really pushes back and tells Brendan this is important. He even, like, kind of, like, finger in his chest. He's like, this is important to me. Like, dude, here's the thing. You don't fuck with Dwayne and his music. He'll help you. He'll do, this, that, and the other. But if you are trying to interfere with Dwayne actually doing music that he is passionate about, he will get very defensive. Like I said, he like finger in Brendan's chest. He's like, no, this is important to me.
Tell him, Dwayne.
I feel like Dwayne's had to make that conversation known with a lot of people. That's why he has to keep jumping. I think he talks about him and his mother a little bit later. Very similar thing.
Yeah. Well, Brendan asks him again if he has to leave right now, and then asks him a follow-up question. Well, who's waiting on you? And that's when Dwayne explains, the band, Cynthia. And that's when Brendan just blurts out, I'll do it. And Dwayne's like obviously kind of confused. And he's like, do what? And then Brendan, showing his actual intentions by a literal like ghost Cynthia spinning in his hands. He's like, the documentary. Every band has one. And obviously it's just because he knows Cynthia's going to be there. But Dwayne is pretty hesitant. But Brendan insists, and Dwayne kind of reluctantly agrees as he's walking away. And Brendan immediately starts practicing his opening line for when he sees Cynthia again.
I think this was the part of the episode where I had my first scream, because I didn't want to see this happen again. I didn't want to see this happen again.
It has to.
The second that he opened his hands, and then the Star Wars ghost of Cynthia spinning like some sort of ornament, I was like, no.
That's right. So the next scene, we are at soccer practice. Brendan's explaining to Coach McGurk he needs to leave early. McGurk sarcastically is like, fine, leave early. And Brendan's like, thank you. And Coach immediately asks, like, you don't care about soccer anymore? He even asked Brendan if he has a note, and Brendan's like, yeah, here's your note. And I think Coach even says, legally, I'm not allowed to let you leave unless you have a note. So Brendan's like, okay, I'll bring one tomorrow. And Coach is like, no, write it up right now. So Brendan starts writing out the note, and Coach tells him, like, hey, attach a little something to that. And that's when Brendan says a C note. Do you know what a C note is?
No.
A C note.
A C note's a $100 bill.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Why is that?
I thought it meant just like a note, like a playable note.
A $100 bill, because C is the Roman numeral for 100.
Ooh.
So it's slang.
See, I thought that he was bringing it back to when he was singing the note.
Oh, like a
C,
a note
playable
in the
note. Yeah.
That's what I thought too.
No. Yeah.
I
no.
see note.
No. Yeah, attach a little something. Oh, like a note in the key of C.
So if he said a C note, why wouldn't McGurk be like, yeah, $100?
Well, I think McGurk, even knowing, was like, he's like, just throw a 5 on there.
Little man, put that shit into my hand.
So he asks Brendan where he has to go, and Brendan explains that he's in a pizza club with his dad because they're both fond of pizza. I like this scene because Brendan's like taking a soccer ball and just like throwing it against Coach and like catching it. And it's just, I don't know. It's just really funny to me that he's doing that. So Coach tells him that sounds stupid, but then immediately says, well, I like pizza. He's like, I wouldn't join a stupid club about it, but I like pizza. And McGurk continues to imply that he likes pizza. Brendan has a pizza club, so he should join his pizza club. And Brendan's like, no, this is kind of more of a father-son thing.
I like how he goes from saying that it's stupid and that he wouldn't join one to him being like, "Can I join your pizza club?"
Yeah.
This is masculine bonding.
Well, and I like it too because Coach like immediately gets defensive. He's like, "So you have a private club that excludes people?" And the whole time Brendan's like, I mean, yeah, I guess so. And Coach even says, "Well, there's a word for that, Brendan." And Brendan is like, "What?" And he's like, "I don't know, but there is a word for that."
Discrimination.
And I love it because Coach gets frustrated and he's like, "Brendan, maybe you should leave." And Brendan's like, "Oh, okay, thanks." That was kind of the point the whole time. So now we're immediately at the pizza restaurant. It's called Pizza Pizzas. And Andrew and Brendan are picking up a pizza. Andrew's explaining to Brendan that they'll go ahead and take it back to his apartment. And Brendan is like, "Well, why can't we just eat it here?" And Andrew explains that his apartment is cleaner, plus they can rent some movies. Brendan agrees and goes on to explain that if Andrew is comfortable and keeps it quiet, Brendan can do a rated R movie. And if he's extra quiet, we could go X. There's a little bit of a beat, and Andrew is like, "Keep talking." And that's when Brendan says he's been reading about a little film called Caligula. And that's when the coach walks in and interrupts them.
I have a question. Is it called Pizza Pizzas or is it called Pizza Pizzazz?
Ooh, that's a good question. There is an establishing shot on the outside at one point, but I thought it was just pizza, and then a Z at the end to make it like Pizza Pizzas. But I have it right here. You know what? I think it could almost go either.
Yeah.
Oh, no. It's the whole PetSmart debacle again. I hate that. Just tell me what it is, PetSmart.
Is it PetSmart or PetSmart?
So it is pizza and then pizza with a Z at the end. I could definitely see that as being read Pizza Pizzazz.
Yeah.
Okay.
I prefer Pizza Pizzazz. I feel like it's got more pizzazz.
That makes more sense, yeah.
I was going to say.
And I think I just assume Pizza Pizzas like the Little Caesars kind of.
Yeah.
Right now, as a community, we all need to just look at Pizza Pizzazz and say that's Pizza Pizzazz, and no one can question it ever again.
I think you're right.
I also have another question. I just noticed that the mascot of Pizza Pizzazz is a bee.
I think that was just a bee that happened to be flying in the establishing shot.
Okay, all right.
But I don't know. I also have it paused here, and I don't know if you can see the menu, but it just says pepperoni like 18 times.
It's because it's one of the best toppings.
Right.
I mean,
so I have a question.
Yeah.
Brendan says if we keep it extra quiet, we could go X. Andrew says keep talking.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when Brendan brings up Caligula. Marcin,
yes.
as a filmmaker, are you familiar with the movie Caligula?
Yeah, but I've never seen it.
Oh, I was just going to say, I've never seen it either. I just kind of had to, look into it a little bit. So are you familiar with the content of this movie?
I'm assuming it's fucked up because Caligula himself was fucked up.
Right. And the movie is based on the Roman Emperor Caligula and his rise and fall. It stars Malcolm McDowell, who was in A Clockwork Orange, Halloween, and like 150 billion other movies. But the thing was, Caligula, it was all written, it was all filmed. And basically what happened was they got rid of the screenwriter and director and then brought in another person to film a bunch of literal like orgy and like very graphic sex scenes. And the whole thing is that like it kind of changed the tone of what the movie originally was. And then it wasn't very well received. Apparently in 2023, there was like a re-edit that took all that out and added some like never before seen stuff. It was showed at a film festival and people generally liked it. But when the film came out, it was very heavily panned. And it was essentially like, this is borderline pornographic. Not even sometimes borderline. It's like some of it was very pornographic. And it was almost a little throwaway. The whole thing was leading up to Brendan is talking about this essentially pornographic movie with his dad. And that's when McGurk interrupts them. Mm-hmm. This is not a joke that I think is like, oh, this aged poorly. I think this is just not a very good joke.
Yeah.
I think this is a joke that was specifically made for film nerds. When Quentin Tarantino says he loves Joker too, he loves it because he's in on the joke because he's a director, shitting on the audience. And I feel like people who have seen the movie Caligula laughed at this joke, and they're like, haha, this is funny because Caligula is really fucked up.
And I don't want to get too in the weeds with this whole thing. Even though I love this show so much, it's not going to be 100% hilarious perfect all the time. That's just how it is. It's flawed just like other shows, just like humans. No.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that made it weird for me was because the dad was all like, keep talking, and it's just like, oh, okay, it's a child.
Right.
I also know it's an animation and not real, but I'm just like, it was a joke that honestly didn't really need to be in there. But,
Yeah. I think we're just going to kind of leave it at that.
I agree with you to the end of that. Speaking as someone who is allowed to watch R-rated films at the age of 3, not good. Not a good time.
No.
Yeah, it is what it is. But I think the scene we definitely want to highlight is immediately after that conversation in the pizza place is when we get interrupted by...
Brendan.
Coach?
Well. What a coincidence. How are you? Who's this?
Oh, Dad, this is my soccer coach, Coach McGurk.
Oh, hey, nice to meet you.
Oh, yeah, I pictured you much younger. That's cool. I have a lot of respect for a guy who can keep it going.
That's terrific.
Yeah. What are you guys up to? Huh?
Well, we got some pizza.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little pizza, huh?
Yeah.
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 Yeah, Coach.
What are you guys, you got the to-go thing, or are you going to do here?
Well, we're going to take it back to my apartment.
Oh, I'm just figuring out what I'm going to do, because I'm going to get some pizza too, huh?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice to finally meet a couple fellow pizza lovers. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, this is like a little, it's like a club. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, well, we're going to take off.
Yeah, it was nice meeting you, though.
Very
That's,
nice to meet you.
yeah.
Very nice to meet you.
Yeah, the same. You, Brendan's great out there on the field. You should, it's funny, I haven't seen you at any games.
Hey, Brendan, actually, I'm coming to the next game.
Really?
Yes, I
I
am.
didn't know you were...
Well, I
Really?
was
You've
going
never
to
been
be a
to any
surprise.
games?
I just wanted to show up
Oh,
and
man,
be there. But
Yeah, what kind of pizza you guys got going
That
there?
really is a surprise.
Huh?
well,
Oh, that's great.
I just
Brendan.
wanted
I've
to
never
be there to
seen you at a
support
game.
you.
I've always wanted you to see me play.
Guys.
I feel like if
That's
you're going to be
good.
playing a sport, you
That's
need a man.
You guys got
fantastic,
the,
yeah.
you got a large.
Dad, thanks.
That
Okay.
feeds two.
Thank
Anyway,
you.
let's
That's
go
actually
and,
incredible.
Yeah.
Wow. Thanks.
It's nice,
You guys
nice,
taking
to,
off?
nice to
nice,
meet you.
Yeah, we'll see
You're
you
gonna take
later.
off?
Yeah, nice to meet
Yeah,
you.
we'll see you
I'm gonna
later.
get
See you
I'll
later.
probably
I can't believe you're coming to the
stick
game.
around
It's
here
incredible.
or definitely get some pizza then, I guess.
It's a very uncomfortable scene because it's very obvious what Coach is doing. Coach is trying to catch them and be like, hey, look, you're here, I'm here, I like pizza, you like pizza, you have a club, I like pizza. Brendan catches on pretty quick what's going on, but yeah, a lot of that scene is just Coach kind of standing there while Brendan and his dad talk about future plans.
And their pizza's getting cold.
Yeah. But McGurk had a couple, he's like, I pictured you younger.
Oh, yeah.
He's like, funny, I haven't seen you at any of the soccer games. And that's what starts the conversation between Brendan and his dad about Andrew going to one of his games. And yeah, that's when he says, well, if you're going to be playing sports, you need a man there. So following scene opens with Jason and Melissa in the sandbox, and Brendan is approaching them asking about a production meeting. Brendan immediately kind of gets defensive and tells them if they're worried about this documentary that it shouldn't interfere with their work. Melissa assures him that that's not the issue and confesses that her and Jason have been talking, and the thing is, your mother.
Yo mama.
And that's when Brendan is a little taken back, and he's even like, do you mean yo mama? And Melissa specifies, no, your actual mother. Jason claims she's been making noises about wanting to act in films. Brendan says he hasn't noticed anything, and Melissa points out that, yeah, because we were the ones that she cornered.
When you said your actual mother, I got flashbacks to actual brother.
Same.
Nice. Jason claims that she was dropping hints, like the other day when she interrupted the movie, and Brendan asks if he should talk to her, and Jason and Melissa say they think that they should do something a little more drastic. And that's when Brendan asks, like, kill her? And Jason said, no, we need to send a message. And they confessed that Jason and Melissa were talking, and they think that they should put her in a movie. You know, just get her off our back. Brendan seems hesitant and says he doesn't want to rush into anything, and maybe they should give it a few days and see what happens. Jason, like, laughs.
Yeah, why?
I think he is just, like, laughing at Brendan, like, brushing off the situation. I don't know, but Jason just laughs, and Melissa says she doesn't know, and Brendan is just kind of like being adjourned.
I gotta go.
Well, you're right, because next we're at Dwayne's house. They're practicing, and Brendan does a obviously very genuine, "Oh, Cynthia, wow, is that you? Oh, I didn't know you were going to be here."
Did you lose weight?
Oh, my God. Yep, Brendan tells her she looks great, asks if she lost weight. She says no, but does mention that she might be a little bit taller, because she is growing up.
That was mean.
Yeah, she's very uninterested in talking to Brendan. Something I noticed Cynthia does is I feel like if Brendan is like, saying something or, trying to hit on her or whatever, and she just doesn't like it, she's just like, "What?" Because, yeah, she did it this time. She's done it previous times too. Like anytime he says anything and she's "What?" And then, "Did you say awesome?" No.
Well, the thing is, like, at one point she did like Brendan back, but he screwed it up by pretending to be Jason.
Mm-hmm.
He had his chance.
Right.
But he lied.
In that episode, she wasn't really doing much for him as far as like trying to contribute to the date.
Yeah, but at the end of that episode, when he's bringing all the empties out to the recycling for his mom, like, she does approach him and says, "We need to hang out." She shows him that she was paying attention, but she was just working at the time. So there was a point where the interest was there for sure. But yeah, he fucked it up.
Did he ask her out on a date, or did she ask him out on a date in that episode?
I believe he was the one who initially said that they should hang out and do something
And
sometime.
then she was like, "Okay, well, call me when you figure out what we're gonna do." And I think that's where the disconnect started happening.
Right. But as a, not to be devil's advocate, from that perspective, if the person was like, "Let's go on a date," and then, "But you have to plan it," and it's like, okay. As I feel like if the person who is initiating the date should have at least some kind of idea.
Right. That's true. But also, she invited Dwayne and the band to their date.
That's true.
So
it wasn't really a date, I guess, if you're inviting
signals.
Dwayne.
Yeah, I think that's just a lot of miscommunications. Not really sure what was happening. Not a lot of collaboration on both parts. But again, they're kids.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Brendan points out that, it's probably weird for her to see him right now because they had some rocky times. And that's when Cynthia says it wasn't rocky, it was just... And Brendan just kind of screams over her.
Yeah, I wonder why she doesn't like him.
Yeah, I wrote here, Brendan screams over her instead of having an actual conversation.
This was the part where there are several points in this episode where I had to take my headphones off and just like not engage. This was definitely one of those parts where I was like, let me just look at this image and pretend like nothing bad's happening.
Well, it's at that point that he awkwardly says he needs to get back to Dwayne, even though he just walked in. So the next scene starts, and it's the documentary of the band Scab, talking about how Dwayne was born 15 years ago in a place where he was one of many hundreds of babies that was born that year. At the age of 6, he was given a thing as a gift, and that thing was a guitar, and that date would change his life forever.
I love Jason being little kid Dwayne.
Yeah, the reenactment. Melissa's like the mom. She's
Yeah.
all proud. We cut to an interview with Dwayne, and he's not really saying much, but then he's like, and the thing is, that's when Brendan cuts away and says a couple years later, Dwayne meets other people who also played instruments, and they figured out when they played together, it would sound good. Now, I don't know if you guys caught this, but in the band documentary, there is like a mysterious fifth member of Scab. When he talks about like, oh yeah, and then he found other people that play music, there was like a fifth dude with long brown hair.
Yeah, I remember not seeing him before. He's got like the side shaved or braided back or something.
Yeah. And then later in the documentary, when they talk about the mom told them to turn it down, and Dwayne's like, and people raised their voices and people fought. It looked like, I don't know if they were supposed to be like Polaroids or just stills, but it's that guy walking away. Like him and Dwayne are arguing, and then that guy is walking away. And then the documentary picks up like, okay, so now they're getting ready for the Battle of the Bands, and now that guy's not in the band anymore.
Oh shit, he quit the band.
Over being asked to turn the volume down, apparently.
Damn.
Did you notice on the knob they had written in 11 on the amp?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they turned it down to 4. So I believe that's a reference to...
Some documentary.
It's the mockumentary. It's
Oh, it's a mockumentary that does it?
Yeah, this is Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
There it is. Whew. Yeah, the actual band was in it, but they did a mockumentary, and that was the whole thing. All their equipment was specially made to get turned up to 11.
This one goes to 11. So I that was the only thing I caught in the documentary. I was like, aha, I get that reference.
Yeah, it was really funny. I like at one point towards this part of the documentary, he talks about how the band is now working towards what might be their biggest undertaking yet, the battling of the bands. And
Did they have to put battling of the bands because of the copyright of Battle of the Bands?
I'm not sure because I feel like it did say Battle of the Bands on maybe like a couple posters or signs or something. But yeah, I'm not sure. Weirdly enough, there is a similar like Battle of the Bands type thing in another episode, and that has a different name as well.
Interesting.
Is there a copyright on Battle of the Bands? Like there's a copyright on Happy Birthday Song?
There's a copyright on the Happy Birthday song?
There was. I don't think there is anymore.
Oh,
I think
shit.
now you're free to use it. But there's a copyright on the word Super Bowl. Like,
Oh, yeah.
that's why everybody
The
advertises
big game.
The big game.
Yeah.
And then just use 2 generic football helmets.
I know the Happy Birthday one is copyrighted, so anytime it's why restaurants have to go happy, 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 happy birthday, and you can't really see it in cartoons or TV shows. I think Regular Show had an episode where they had to come up with a better Happy Birthday song because they couldn't copyright it.
Yeah, I do feel like that has changed in the last handful of years where I don't remember if it lapsed or if it was dropped, but I think Happy Birthday is okay now, I think.
It's Popsicle.
But
Just like Steamboat Willie.
That's true.
yeah, but so in this part of the documentary, Brendan is talking about like the difficulties that they had, and one of the clips that they show is when Brendan straight up electrocuted Dwayne. I don't know if you saw that in the documentary,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was one of the clips was when Brendan electrocuted Dwayne. So the documentary ends with Cynthia, and she's claiming that they can't finish the banner unless they have more paint, Dwayne.
Yeah, Dwayne.
We pull back to reveal that Brendan is watching this, seemingly editing, and Paula approaches him and kind of scares him. Brendan asks Paula what she's doing, and she claims nothing, and then starts wiping off the TV. So after that, we see Brendan walking into school. Well, before he can get in, we pan by Coach's reckless car, and we see him sitting on the hood, and he's holding a bicycle. He calls Brendan over and tells him to hop on. And Brendan says that the bike is awesome. He hops on and we see
A gnome.
a gnome on the front of the bike. Did he have little fangs?
It looked like it had fangs, yeah.
some kind of weird vampire gnome.
Nice. Nosferatu gnome.
But yeah, we got a gnome on the front of the bike. Brendan asks Coach where he got the bike, and Coach tells him not to worry about it. And the bike is for him. Brendan says he's speechless. And Coach says he thought he might like it, and even says, man, my dad would have never done anything like this for me.
Aw.
And then he asks Brendan, what about your old man? Would he ever do anything like this for you? And Brendan says, oh yeah, he got me a bike. And McGurk's even like, when? And he's like, oh, like a week ago? And you hear McGurk's like, oh, that's recent.
I did write that down that is this the bike that Brennan just got because his other bike was broken from that car accident he was in?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, his dad might have gotten him a bike
Yeah.
to replace it. That makes a lot of sense. So Coach goes on to ask Brendan, well, yeah, but is it as nice of a bike as this one? And Brendan's like, no, actually, my bike's nicer. That's when Coach starts to get frustrated. Tells Brendan, I don't like that guy. I don't like you hanging out with him. You shouldn't be hanging out with strangers. And Brendan points out, like, yeah, he's a stranger to you, but he is my dad. And Coach is like, I don't like him. Don't try to rationalize this. McGurk even points out that Brendan is still part of the soccer team, and he's the soccer coach.
The line where he goes, I'm still your coach, right? Like, that had some emotion behind it, for sure.
Well, he wants to be Brendan's dad, and for a while he was Brendan's dad.
Yeah, and then he got replaced by Brendan's dad.
What's so funny, in one episode that we watched, it was the first episode with Dad.
Yeah.
At one point when we met Linda, Adele was like, she needs therapy. And I was like, funny you say that, because the next episode was therapy. In that same episode, Marson, I think you were like, I wonder if there's going to be any like dynamic with McGurk being jealous of Andrew.
I have been looking forward to that dynamic, especially when we saw him cutting off his dad in traffic, I was like, here we go. Reckless mobile.
Yes.
Take him out.
So this is kind of that episode. McGurk is definitely kind of in his feels that Brendan's no longer in need of his fatherly wisdom, I guess. So he tells Brendan to get off the bike, and Brendan says he still likes it, but there's some paint that's scratched, and it maybe looks like it's already got someone's initials on it. I did pause it, and you can make out LY. So it had Lynch's name on it.
Mr. Lynch was in 2 different scenes in this episode and didn't say a goddamn word the entire time.
Yeah, they probably just didn't have the voice actor.
What was the other one?
But you're right.
He was on the bleachers when Brennan's dad.
Why was Mr. Lynch at a soccer game? He don't give a shit.
I know. When I first watched it, I was like, oh, Mr. Lynch is going to like intervene, and why else would he be in the background? Nope, he's just in the background chilling.
Because they just had his character, and they're like, yeah, fill up the bleachers. We already got his character model. Right. Slap it on there. Brendan points out that paint is scratched, and you can already see some initials on it, and that's when we pan over and see that, yep, it's Mr. Lynch holding the broken bicycle chain on the bike rack where his bike used to be.
He's staring at his buddy. Give me my fucking bike back.
So we open on the next scene, and we are outside of Pizza Pizzazz. We go inside and see Brendan and Andrew sitting at a table, in front of them a pepperoni pizza. Andrew, I think, is doing like a Kennedy voice. It says, I hereby officially engage another meeting of the Pizza Club. Brendan claims that meeting number 24-1.1 officially in session. Any old business? No. How about new business? No. They ask about the pizza. Andrew says, how's your documentary going? Brendan says, good. Andrew says, and Cynthia? And Brendan says, hates me.
Yep.
Andrew says, good. Everything seems to be in order. That's what Brendan points out. No, actually, I kind of planned it so she would like me instead of hating me, but somehow I mixed it up. I love this. Andrew points out, he's like, classic problem. He's like, did you try too hard around her? Brendan's like, yeah. Andrew asks if you've been acting weird and unnatural around her, and Brendan's like, yes. I think Brendan's like, yeah, I blurt out random stuff. I want to sound spontaneous. So basically what Andrew is getting at, he's like, so she's never seen you like relaxed, just normal? And Brendan's like, no, and she still somehow hates me. So Andrew asks the big question, have you told Cynthia how you feel about her? And Brendan laughs and says, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
McGurk has taught him well.
So we have a cool transition here because we have the next scene, but it's in literally the exact same location. So after Brendan says that's the stupidest thing I ever heard, we kind of pull back and then pan over to McGurk, who's sitting at a booth with Walter and Perry. He's proclaiming that they're now in a pizza club and they should start eating pizza. That's when Perry points out that he can't have pizza. He's allergic. And Walter points out that he is also lactose intolerant. I think they bring up, I have a spastic colon.
Yeah.
I didn't know what that was.
It's so spastic.
I think it's just when you eat too much cheese and
you got a lot of toots.
Your toots and poots are out of control.
I'm so glad I asked. So happy. I know this information now.
That and C note. So go on, go for it.
And B note.
Yeah. C note and B note. Take this information and go forth and conquer. So yeah, Walter and Perry are talking about their spastic colon. They ask each other who their doctor is. They realize they have the same doctor. And that's when they're like, we could go see him right now. And then they just leave. We get a shot of McGurk by himself saying, I guess Pizza Club is over.
Wah, wah, wah.
Or McGoik.
He just wants to be a part of Pizza Club.
Now we're back in the movie. So funny enough, Brendan says this is a Fugitives meets My Two Dad kind of deal, but they do have a clapboard, and the clapboard says this movie is called Who's Your Daddy?
And what does he do?
I like this part too because it's completely unnecessary, but I find it so funny. We're back in the movie with Lil Malulu as a teenager. At first, Jason is wearing a mustache, and he gets halfway through his first line, and his mustache falls off. And he's like, oh. So then we see the clapboard with the Who's Your Daddy, take 2. And now Jason delivers the same line, but he's just not wearing the mustache. Yeah. So they just pretty much said, fuck it. We're not doing the mustache.
So true.
Yeah. So Brendan calls her little Malulu, and Malulu points out she's not so little anymore. It's been 10 years and now I'm a teenager. Brendan points out, well, we're still fugitives and the police have not caught us yet.
Am I the only one who clocked the body scan of teenage Melissa's character?
I didn't. I mean, I scanned it. I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, that's the society we live in, fellas.
Clip that. Chat, clip that. That's a good audio. Put it on TikTok.
Real.
Well, it's still here.
Yep. Put it on TikTok for a week and a half.
Yeah.
Jason points out that you would think we would at least be unshackled by now. And that's when they reveal they're still handcuffed together. Malulu says the reason she wanted to talk is because she's going on a date. Jason pushes back and says that she's not old enough to date, and Brendan says we knew this day would come. Brendan suggests they can't hold her back, and Jason says they should hold her back, and Brendan says they shouldn't, but what they should do is be chaperones on her date.
Camera zoom.
Malulu pushes back and says that they're escaped convicts and that couldn't be any more uncool. She then runs out and says that she hates them both, and Brendan and Jason come together, look at the camera, and in unison say, "That's our daughter." And that's when Paula comes into the scene wearing a clown outfit, asked if anyone ordered balloons.
I said waka waka.
Brendan stops the scene and asks Paula if she wants to have a quick talk. We cut immediately to this talk between Brendan and his mom. He asks how she's doing, and she just honks the clown horn. Brendan says, "I'm getting the feeling that you'd like to be involved in the movies," and Paula said, "No, but you might be projecting that upon me." Brendan calls her out for dressing in costume and wandering into the movie, and Paula points out that, yeah, she's been a little bored since she's in between jobs, but if she happens to wander into frame while in the basement, that's entirely an accident.
Not Paula gaslighting her child.
To save face.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny because Brendan is like, okay, well then let me clarify. You do not want to be in a movie. And Paula touches her nose, which I'm pretty sure in charades means like, yeah, you're onto something. And then is like, no.
And he's like, oh, you're just projecting that onto me. Oh, interesting take on the situation, Paula.
It seems like a lot of the adults don't know how to communicate. McGurk, Andrew, Paula.
Yeah.
I'm going to say I don't like any of the adults in this episode. I think they all act childish.
Well, Mr. Lynch didn't say anything out of pocket this
That's
episode.
true. He was a silent hero.
And one might say Mr. Lynch has rarely said anything out of pocket.
That's true.
Except for when they were in Mexico.
Buddy.
Buddy.
Let's go to Mexico, Mr. Lynch. Let's have a good time. Let's leave this whole city behind us.
Now we're at the battling of the bands. I love the first band. We have a hippie jam band playing. We cut to a scene of the crowd, and it's one extremely high dude. Mm-hmm. His eyes are fucking glazed.
Yeah.
And 7 versions of the same dancing hippie woman with flowers in her hair.
There was another high dude sitting on the ground.
Yeah.
Too.
And I think a dude with a drink.
Yeah.
But that super high guy, and then just the 7 exact clones of a hippie girl dancing.
It was a music fest. Everyone was high.
Yeah.
Well, the next band is some kind of like futuristic electronic band. Very symmetrical.
Yeah.
We pull back and the crowd is like 3 people who are just very unimpressed. There's a guy holding a sign that says, "You suck." I believe that guy is one of David's friends, David Santangelo, who I had the opportunity to interview. He was the one who was getting drawn in the background of the restaurant scene. Double background catch on this because I see David's friend that he has incorporated into other backgrounds. But we also see for a split second the stage, and the stage has a couple sponsors on it. And one of the sponsors is Burps Cola.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't it say Burpsy?
Yeah, it did. Burpsy.
It was Burpsy Cola?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know why I thought it was just Burps Cola. But the other one was Davio's Hard Lemonade.
Yeah.
And Davio was the nickname of David Santangelo.
I mean, oh shit.
Yeah, and he's in the credits a lot as Davio.
Dang. That's funny.
Yeah, so that was Davio's Hard Lemonade.
While we were watching this, I low-key was like, they had David's Lord. They had David's Hard Lemonade in 2002? I guess they did.
Yeah, I think Mike's Hard has been around. Mike's Hard Lemonade's been around for a minute.
I was only introduced to it at 21 as a legal adult.
Yes, my first alcoholic beverage the day I turned 21.
I didn't know what Mike's Hard Lemonade was. I didn't know why it was so hard, and it was just in the fridge when I was, at home at one point as a teenager. And I was like, you know what? I love lemonade, and I was drinking it, and it was not good. I was like, oh, so this is why it's hard, because it's hard to drink.
Just like those hard drugs.
Hard drugs, hard drinks, hard lemonade. These lemons are hard to lemonade.
Yeah. And I was not above 21, so.
The scandal.
The muscles.
Get him.
The next band, it's like a solo artist. He's like a folk singer, kind of. He's got a harmonica singing about his morning coffee with a literal ashtray, like with a pile of cigarette butts in it.
Yeah.
I don't know if this was supposed to be like a Bob Dylan type or if there was any kind of influence behind it or if it was just generic folk singer guy.
Maybe.
Guys, should have sent an email before we did this episode. I could have found out.
Yeah. Or you could have just asked Bob at the beginning of the Creative Corner
Does this
segment.
look like you? Bob, how do you feel about Timothy Chalamet?
Doodly doo.
We love Timothy Chalamet in this house. We are a Timothée stan of this house.
I like the last band is like an 80s jam band like. The drummer has like 1 billion drums. The guitar player is playing a Black Hole Brew guitar.
Yeah, I noticed that.
The lead singer has assless chaps. The guitar player's wearing like a Where's Waldo type shirt.
I wasn't expecting the assless chaps. I just think about when Linda showed up in her scandalous sleepwear, and I just thought it was a black dress, and everyone's like, "Oh no!" And then just ashless chaps, just straight in the camera.
I don't want to be a curmudgeon or anything, but like, why didn't that band win Battle of the Bands?
I don't know.
The crowd seemed to be in it.
There wasn't enough ass in the assless chaps, I guess.
I guess not. So while this band is playing, we see Cynthia sitting off to the side on some sound equipment backstage. Brendan's asking if he can do a quick interview, and Cynthia says, no, I don't really feel like it. Brendan tells her it would just take a second, so she agrees. He asks her name and how she's involved with the band. He also asks why she spends all her time helping the band, and she says, I think they're great. And I love their music. That's when Brendan asks why she won't give him the time of day. And that's when Cynthia says, interview over, and runs off. Brendan chases her and says, no, interview not over. If you have secondhand embarrassment. Brendan then rushes the stage, grabs the microphone, so he can confess to Cynthia that he is in like with her. He wishes he wasn't. He wishes he didn't like her, but he does.
Which everybody wants to hear.
Right.
I wish I didn't like you, goddammit.
This was the second moment I took my headphones off, so I didn't know what he was saying. He was just screaming at a crowd. He was screaming like a lunatic on a Saturday night.
You couldn't handle it.
No, I can't. I can't handle any secondhand embarrassment. The other night we were watching.
I feel that.
I forgot what we were watching. I think we were watching Inside Out 2, me and Nick, and I had to keep pausing the movie for like 5-10 minutes at a time because I was getting such bad secondhand embarrassment. That's exactly how I felt during this episode. Not once, not twice, but several times. And this big one, on the crowd. I literally wrote in my notes, just leave her alone.
Amen.
So when Brendan is talking to Cynthia and she stops in the crowd, this random audience member just looks like Jason with like weird kind of punk purple hair.
I see that.
I just wanted to point that out.
It's his older brother. Is this going to be the second clip you show, by the way?
No, I'm not going to.
Okay,
no.
cool.
No.
I will point out it does say just Battle of the Bands on top. It doesn't
Yes,
say
it
Battling
does.
of the Bands. So I retract my previous statement.
It's okay. While he's confessing his like for Cynthia, she just straight up leaves. And Brendan is just left awkwardly standing on the stage. So we cut again to see that Scab has won the Battle of the Bands. Dwayne takes the trophy and uses it to play the guitar. The band continues to play. Fireworks go off in the background, and we pull back to see Brendan sitting on a hilltop, recording the whole thing absolutely miserable.
I mean, you did it to yourself, Brendan. Like,
He did.
early on, like, he did, 2 strikes and he was out, Like, he tried twice and then he left, Good on you. But, like, no one brought you back on bat. No one gave you a bat and said, go up there and try it. Like, it was over. Just go home.
Yeah.
Take the L, please.
Yeah. Please take it.
Please, man.
Please, Brendan, please. So the following scene, we're at a soccer game. Coach is yelling, everyone on my team, play the game of soccer.
They're all just staring at him.
He's doing like hand motions and one of them's like a little butterfly floating up.
Yeah, I know.
So that's when Andrew shows up to say hello to Brendan, who is sitting on the bench. Andrew asks why he isn't playing, and Brendan explains, I don't. This is what I do. Sit on the bench. Andrew points out he's doing really good and nice work, and Brendan thanked him. Says, oh yeah, speaking of thanks for the relationship advice. Tell her how I feel. That was yours, yeah? And Andrew says, didn't work, huh?
I like how he never gets mad at McGurk for all the bad advice he's given him.
Yeah. And first of all, telling her how you feel doesn't mean go up on a stage and scream it in front of a bunch of people as she's trying to get away from you.
Yeah.
Well, to Andrew's credit, he kind of scratches his head and says, yeah, well, I guess I don't know everything. And that's when Coach approaches and tells Andrew that if he doesn't play soccer, he needs to go sit on the bleachers with the parents and Mr. Lynch. This is the bench where the soccer players are. Brendan even points out to Coach, like, what are you doing? Cut it out. You're acting like a jerk. And Coach kind of starts laughing. Says, that's pretty funny coming from you.
Ooh.
And Brendan even asks, like, what does that mean? And Coach and Brendan really start going back and forth. And McGurk is like, you're benched. And Brendan's like, I'm already benched. He's like, you're double benched. I think by the time Andrew interrupts him, McGurk triple benches Brendan.
Earlier in my notes, I wrote McGurk crash out when. And then later in my notes at this point, I put, McGurk crash out now.
McGurk crash out now.
He was just going. He was really taking his anger and jealousy out on Brendan of all people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, Andrew tries to diffuse the situation, gets them to calm down, and then we get a scene of Andrew and Brendan in a pizza place in front of a pepperoni pizza as they announce the induction of their newest member, John McGurk.
Let's go!
Coach comes out and starts giving a little speech how it feels good. Thanks him, says he hasn't really been in a club in a while, and he starts tearing up. Brendan and Andrew are just like, hey, it's going to be okay. I think Brendan tells them, like, hey, let's just have some pizza. And Coach crying says, yeah, that's why we're here. So now we have Brendan with a clapboard, and it says, Brendan is saying, my 2 fugitive dads take 32, but the clapboard said, who's your daddy? Scene 32, take something else. So, okay, that's fine.
Who's your daddy? Maybe that was the working title.
Yeah, on the clapboard. We have Brendan and Jason telling little Malulu they have some great news. Brendan tells her they searched all over the earth, and they'd like to introduce her to someone. That's when Jason says, yo, mama, and Brendan says, your mother. So we have Paula come in a police hat, calls her little Melinda. Jason has to correct her and say it's Malulu. Paula reads her lines off her hand, says, I'm sorry for leaving you when you were a baby, line. And Brendan said that was your line. Paula then says, you aren't going to arrest us, are you? And Jason's like, that was my line. Paula says yes before Brendan corrects her and says, no, you're not going to arrest us. And the whole thing is just kind of a mess. Brendan just yells cut and rap.
This is the third time.
Third time you've hit.
This was the third time I took off my headphones. I wasn't going to deal with this one either.
Melissa points out we didn't even finish the scene, and Brendan says, yep, still a rap. He tells Paula, great job. And Paula says she thinks she's ready to direct.
Does that ever come back in future episodes?
I don't think so.
No?
Not that I remember, but you know what? I could be wrong.
What about Pizza Club? Does that come back?
It does not.
What the fuck?
Brendan tells Paula, we'll talk about you directing. Jason and Melissa are just like, yep, great working with you, great job. And they try to kind of just bail. And Paula's like, no, we should have a rap party. And they both leave anyway.
Poor Paula. You know, Paula and McGurk are both lonely in this episode and just want Brendan's attention and love.
maybe they could hang out with each other. You know,
They tried that already in the first episode.
That was a date, you know?
Just as friends.
It's a new season. Paul is a different voice actor. Maybe they could just be good friends.
That's true.
We'll see. Okay, now we have the final scene, which is the end of Brendan's documentary about the band Scab. Brendan says they are on top of the world, and just a few short days ago, nobody knew their names. Now, over 100 people know who they are. The final interview is Dwayne saying that they are now legally the best band in the county, and someday they would hope to go beyond the county and beat other bands too, and who knows, I don't know, and kind of trails off. The entire time, we're slowly panning over to Cynthia, who is looking up at Dwayne, smiling, and I mean, there have been, I think, some little subtle hints here and there, but it's pretty obvious that Cynthia's got a crush on Dwayne.
Oh, yeah. She's like gazing up at him.
Yep.
She never talks to anyone else in the band.
Right.
Dwayne, I need more paint if I'm going to finish a banner.
Dwayne.
I'm going to be honest. I had no idea that she had a crush. Like, I was just like, I was like, I guess she's looking at him.
Well, during Brendan's interview with her, he's like, why do you support the band so much? Why? And she's like, I like them. I like their music. I think they're great. Again, she invites Dwayne and the rest of the, and even says, I invited Dwayne and the other guys during their date. I think the seeds have been there the whole time.
Now that you're putting them together, I'm like piecing them in my brain like it's the end of The Usual Suspects. And I'm like,
My
it's
God.
right there.
So we pull back to reveal that this is Brendan editing the end of the documentary. Brendan looks pretty forlorn as we hear Dwayne trail off and the music swell. And that is the end of Season 2, Episode 12, Pizza Club.
Great ending.
Yes. Well, like I said, the end of Season 2, Episode 12. So you know what that means.
The next episode is season finale.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Episode
Oh, shit.
13.
Got it, dude. So this was Pizza Club. What are our thoughts?
I liked this episode.
Yeah.
It was definitely cringy at times, for sure.
Yes.
But I liked the fact that McGurk kind of showed his ass when it comes to like wanting to be a father figure to Brendan. I thought the jealousy sometimes was a little uncalled for, but it was endearing in its own way.
Yeah. This episode definitely had
Three plot lines.
three plot lines, but three scenes that are like, again, if you have secondhand embarrassment, Brendan taking the mic to confess falling in like with Cynthia. Dude. The part with McGurk where he meets him at the pizza club and they're just having their own conversation and he's just kind of standing. I'm like, bro, I've been that guy before. It sucks.
I call it the third wheel on a sidewalk. Stand behind.
Yeah.
See, I really liked this episode. I thought it was really fun. I liked the concept of every single storyline going forward throughout, just... It seemed like there was a lot at first, because then there's Brendan's dad, and then there's McGurk, and then there's Paula, and then there's the home movie, and then there's the documentary, and Cynthia is there. So it felt like there was a lot going on at the same time. So it was very full, and it was very, very quick, and it felt like it was just moved at a good pace. So... I will say it's a good episode, but my secondhand embarrassment was killing me, dude. At one point, I said a noise I didn't mean to say, and I was like, oh, no. Oh, God.
What? Can you reenact it for a second? Because I don't remember.
No, it was just... I think it was when he grabbed the mic to talk to Cynthia, and I whipped my headphones off, and I was like...
Pterodactyl scream.
Basically, I can't deal with it. But that doesn't detract from the episode. The episode is really good on all fronts. I think Home Movies is doing a good job of letting the side characters be actual set characters, and it feels like they have lives outside of Brendan's circle, and so I'm really enjoying that.
Yeah, absolutely. This season has definitely been so much about letting other characters just kind of grow and breathe and be there. And for better or worse, we're seeing a lot of depth to some of these characters that were like, oh yeah, he was just alcohol soccer coach. And it's like, no, he really genuinely does want to be a father figure to Brendan. And although he doesn't really go about it in the right way, he gets defensive.
Nobody's perfect.
Right, exactly. So
Especially not
yeah. So I do really enjoy this episode. Just a couple small things that put maybe a not so great taste in my mouth, but overall a very enjoyable episode.
Oh, yeah. What grade would you give it? Or do we want to give Jason his grade first?
Oh. I was kind of thinking of Jason's role this episode.
Yeah.
He didn't really do anything. Like, he was there. And he was Brendan's friend, and he was an actor, and he was like, me and Melissa were talking outside of Brendan's view, being friends in some capacity. So I enjoyed that element of Jason, but he didn't really have a major role.
No.
Yeah, that's fair.
So I just gave him the baseline grade I always give him when he's there and, just being Jason and not being, like, overly negative. I gave him a B.
All right. I think that's a very generous baseline grade for him.
Yeah, it's a B for buddy. B for...
Like, he loses points and grades the more he, does something evil, terrible.
Gross.
I know...
Right.
Gross, betrays Melissa, all of those things. But didn't do any of those here. And he was trying his best to talk about the whole Paula situation. So, give him a B.
I did see him wipe a booger on his pants in this episode, but I don't think you clocked that one.
F?
That's funny.
Nah, I didn't see it. It's fine.
If you didn't see it, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
I'll let him get away with the boogers.
B for booger.
B for booger.
B for Loki booger. That's funny. I think that is a good grade. He was gross, but it was so low key you didn't even catch it.
You don't even.
So. It was probably when my headphones got flung off and thrown in a different direction.
Yeah, you're probably busy being embarrassed about some other shit going on. That's fair. So, okay, I think a B is a respectable Jason grade. What do we say for the episode itself?
Did you want to start with your grade?
I'm really floating on this one. I'm floating between, I'm going to say an A- and a B+. That's kind of where my head is right now. God, it really was, like you said, Marcin, it's such a jam-packed episode. So much going on. Mini documentary, the movie, the bell, the bands, A plot, B plot, C plot. Cynthia's back. Cynthia's gone. I should probably look this up, guys. I don't think Cynthia's ever coming back. I think that's the end of that.
Do you want her to come back?
No, but it ended on a cliffhanger.
I mean, he embarrassed her in front of a crowd of people. I think that's pretty the nail on the coffin as far as their interactions.
Sure, but the episode ended on him looking at the editing and then cut to credits lingering on her face. And she never comes back.
I just checked the fandom wiki for home movies, and by character they have first appearance, last appearance.
Yeah. She doesn't come back?
She is not coming back. Pizza Club is her last
That documentary is all he's ever going to have of her forever. It's the last bit of memory.
Listen. That just dropped the grade for me. Oh my god.
For this episode?
Of the episode?
Yeah.
What are you going to give it then?
Oh, I feel bad now. I shouldn't have said any. I gave you information.
Sometimes that's just how life pans out, guys.
Damn. Well, let me just say this. First of all, let's pretend I didn't give you that vital information about Cynthia.
Vital information for your everyday life.
I will say I am giving this episode an A-. I do enjoy this episode. I think there's a lot going on in such a short period of time. I enjoy it. I'm going A-. Mm-hmm. So that is my official grade for this episode.
Okay. I say that's fair.
Yeah. Would you like to go next, or should Marcin? I think he's having a breakdown right now.
I'm going back and forth now with this information. Because if it was just she left, right? That's the end of the episode. It's okay, finally, Brendan, you just kind of got to eat it now. But it ended on him longingly looking at the edit and then that like music slapped against it, like, oh yeah, it's a to be continued. He's staring at just like in the Starboy. Why didn't it end there? When he's like, oh, he's alone, and you see that he tried and he failed. Why'd they bring her back? Why'd they bring her back?
Because sometimes you're just left yearning in life. You gotta learn the lesson.
I mean, sure. I was convinced that the next episode was going to be the finale where Brendan like wins her back in some like way, and I wasn't looking forward to that. But still, I figured they'd pull it out of the fire and win me over. But now that there's just nothing. You made me throw my headphones 3 times for no fucking reason? No closure?
Get the writers on the phone.
No story end? Like, it's just like, hey, Harry, you know that guy that we don't talk about his name ever and you really hate him? Yeah, don't worry, he's never coming back. Like, what? We just wrote how many books? 3 episodes with Cynthia at the core?
I'm starting to feel I should have not divulged that information.
What grade would you have given it if you didn't learn that information, Marcin?
The same grade I gave those 2 episodes where it was like his dad meeting Linda for the first time right before therapy, where I was like, you know what? Like, I know it's another to be continued, but maybe they'll pull it out of the fire in the next episode. I was gonna give it a B+, but now it's like, what? What was the point of this episode? Like, I know it was just like, haha, it's home movies, we do episodic things, but what was the point? What was the point on the end?
The point of this episode was it was the nail in the coffin of Brendan and Cynthia ever being a thing.
I think the theme of this episode was ultimately loneliness. Because McGurk, rejection and loneliness, because McGurk wanted to be in Pizza Club and couldn't be in Pizza Club. Paula wanted to be part of the movies, and she ultimately is not going to be. And Brendan wants to be with Cynthia and ultimately won't be. So I think it's just...
Counterpoint. Yeah. McGurk wanted to be in Pizza Club, wasn't allowed to be in it, but ultimately was allowed to be in Pizza Club. And then Paula wanted to be in the home movies, wasn't in the home movies, and then ultimately was part of home movies. And then Brendan wanted to be with Cynthia, and then doesn't be with Cynthia, which I'm okay with that if that's the ending. But instead of it ending on Brendan just like longingly looking at the edit and then slapping this like coming of age music at the end, like, don't worry, we're coming back, we're gonna be better than ever, revenge part 2. It could have been save some for me, and that would have been a better like nail in the coffin for me. Holy shit.
Well, to be fair, Pizza Club also doesn't come back in the show.
You know what? You're right. A+. Like, what do you mean?
I really need to stop telling you guys, like, this character comes back, or this character is not coming back.
So now that you know what you know, what grade do you give this episode?
Okay, so I'm literally from a B+ to a C. Like, those are the grades I'm looking at. It really, like, that kills it for me. It really does. So I don't know which one I'm going to lock in here. I'm really leaning towards C just on that information. But if we want to just give it a B+ without that information, but I don't... do I retroactively give it a C at the end of the series when I confirm that Cynthia never came back?
I mean, you could cut it in the middle and give it like a B- or a C+, or just go with your gut.
I'll give it a C+.
Okay.
There you go. Writing it down.
I don't think that's a bad grade, given the upset.
It's just the closure for me.
Yeah, I get it.
I still like home movies, but like, holy, there is nothing.
Nope. Well, my grade, I will say there was a lot of cringe and a lot of secondhand embarrassment, which did take it down for me a little bit, just because it makes my body uncomfortable. But there were so many like heavy hitter characters that came back for this. Even Mr. Lynch was there, even though he didn't say anything, but like Dwayne and Walter and Perry and Cynthia and his dad came back for this episode. It almost felt a little bit, if Fenton was in there and Ken Adelberg was in it, it would almost feel like what anime does at the end of a season where they bring all the characters back to the last episode. It was giving those kinds of vibes where like all these heavy hitter characters were coming back. So I'm going to give it a B+, because I ultimately did enjoy the overall storyline. It just got a couple points taken off for the cringe.
Right. Well, so we're between the three of us, we've got an A-, B+, and C+. So we are, I think this is the most kind of scattered we've been on an episode grade.
Yeah.
That's fine. I think this is the one for it.
Well, like I said, gang, next episode is the season finale.
I'm excited for next week's episode.
I am too.
Me too.
Especially now that I know that Cynthia is not going to be the plot line.
Dude, if I told you the title of the next episode, your fucking head would explode.
Oh, okay, don't do that. Don't do that. I need my brain.
I don't.
I guess, God, I feel so bad saying that now that this was Cynthia's last. I'm like, the whole time now, I'm like, I just should have shut the fuck up.
No, I'm glad. I'm glad I know. I'm glad I don't have to like hang on my tippy toes waiting for Cynthia to come out at a random episode and make me scream again.
Well, anything else about that episode, this episode, or does that about do it?
I'd say we covered it.
I would say so.
Yep.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode. Now it's time for those sweet, sweet plugs.
Plug me up.
All right, Marcin, why don't you go first?
I'm reaching into my bag of infinite projects here. I'm still working on the feature film I started in 2016. It's called The Doorman, and it's really weird, experimental. I started working on it before I even understood how anything in film works, like genres or anything like that, so I don't really know how to classify it. All I know is that it's going to get done one day, hopefully. But the logline is, when his childhood friends ghost him, our main character is called to the madhouse, where he forgets who he is and becomes prey to the man in the doorway. In order to escape, he must answer who he is, what he wants, and what his favorite color is. So that's a mouthful, but that's all the projects I'm working on.
Hell yeah. We did not plan that.
No, we didn't. I think we're a unit at this point.
Hell yeah.
An absolute unit.
So sometimes I paint, sometimes I make things, and sometimes I post that on my Instagram, which is the Artisanal of Oddity. That is Artisanal of Oddity at www.instagram.com. And that's my plug.
And as always, this podcast is brought to you by the Happy Corner Podcast. They were nice enough to donate equipment to us so we could keep this podcast going. So we always want to give them a nice little shout out at the end. The Happy Corner Podcast streams every Sunday at 1:45 Central. And then you can get the audio version wherever you get your podcasts. That's going to do it for this episode of Rewatching Home Movies. Join us next week for the Season 2 finale, The Wedding. If you liked what you heard, check out our Linktree at Linktree/RHMpod. There you can like, follow, and subscribe. Send us an email or leave us a 5-star review. I will read 5-star reviews on the podcast. Thanks to Shannon Conway for the refresh of our logo and Chris Bongat for the use of our theme song. On behalf of myself, Tim, and my co-host Marcin and Adele, thank you for rewatching home movies with us. We'll see you next week. Bye.